Hello, my name is Ron Blue, and I've got the privilege of talking to you for a few minutes based upon the experiences that I've had. I was born in 1942, so I'm living into my 7th decade now, and I've seen an awful lot change over time. I've seen the greatest economic growth that the world has ever seen in 70 years. I've experienced terrific swings in markets, be it real estate or stock or commodities or whatever the markets might be. I've lived through terrific amounts of economic fear. It seems like there's always some fear, be it Y2K, be it recession, be it depression, be it war, whatever it might be. There's a lot of economic fear that governs our perception of money and how we handle it. And I've lived with clients making the financial decisions, both good and bad, for over 45 years. I've spent 50 years in the financial services world, starting on Wall Street, and I've spent 40 years in the ministry world when I started a financial planning firm in 1980, where the objective of it was to help Christians plan and manage their money so they would have more to give away and they would experience more freedom. And in fact, I've seen that happen with thousands and thousands of people. As a good steward, as a Christian, I think there are some questions that people will ask and ask legitimately. I get these questions all the time. One is, will I ever have enough? And of course, the question is, enough for what? And secondly, will it continue to be enough if I've got enough? And by the way, how much is enough? What is the finish line? I was counseling with a multi-billionaire, and he had stated this publicly, that he was worth $7 billion. And he had zero debt, and he had had terrific fortune, good fortune, in everything that he had done in the investment world. And in 2008, 2009, when we had the drops in the markets, his net worth dropped from $7 billion to $4 billion. And his response was to go like this and clasp his hands over what he had. He had been giving his wife $1 million a year to give away. $1 million out of $7 billion or $4 billion is not very much, and he took it away from her because he was so fearful of losing what he had. You know, here's the real issue. If I hold with an open hand everything that I have been given, then I have the freedom to receive, but I also have the freedom to let God take out what He has given me. And when I close my hand over wealth, what I have done is I have taken control over the wealth. So here's three questions that I think those of us who have some wealth need to answer. Number one, who owns it? Because the owner gets to determine how it's used. Secondly, do I have any finish lines? How much is enough? And that is the biggest question relative to lifestyle. What is the right lifestyle? How much is enough for me to have, to live and to enjoy and to spend? And the third question is the next steward chosen and prepared. It was 36 years ago when I took a group to Africa, and I had with me a physician who wanted me to help him plan and manage his finances, which I did, and I was able to help him develop a plan to give away $1 million over 5 years. He since that time has given away millions and millions of dollars. But here's the thing that happened while we were in Africa. We were in Kenya. We were about 4 hours outside Nairobi. We were sitting on a hill with this pastor looking down at his one-room mud hut with a thatch roof. And I asked him, I said, "Sir, what is the greatest barrier to the spread of the gospel in this part of the world?" Now, I would have expected him to say tribalism, communication, transportation, money, or something like this. But what he said was the greatest barrier to the spread of the gospel is materialism. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, if a man has a mud hut, he wants a stone hut. If he has a thatch roof, he wants a metal roof. If he's got 1 acre, he wants 2 acres. If he's got 1 cow, he wants 2 cows. I learned then that unless you have a finish line, you'll never ever stop, because once you had that stone hut with that metal roof, then there is something else. And those of us who have wealth, it's the same thing. Once I have that second home, maybe I need a third. Once I have that airplane, that private airplane, maybe I need another one. Once I've taken a big trip around the world, maybe I need to do that again and again and again. And here are a couple of examples of people who answered the question, how much is enough? And I'll never forget visiting with this couple, and I went to visit them. He was the CEO of a major grocery chain on the West Coast and made a lot of money, and what he wanted to do was to maximize his giving. When I went to visit him in Northern California and I got to the address that I had been given, it was a mobile home park. He and his wife had chosen to limit their lifestyle, even though they were making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars every year and they had millions of dollars. They had chosen to limit their lifestyle. His question to me was, can you help me develop a plan to give away $1 million? And I did. I gave him a plan. They gave away millions of dollars. His widow, he died a couple of years ago, and his widow called me and said this. She said, Ron, I want you to know that when you said that we could give away $1 million, we really doubted you. But you gave us a plan, and we gave away that first $1 million, and then we gave away millions and millions and millions. And now they live in a very modest lifestyle. So is that the right answer when it comes to how much is enough? Not so sure. Let me give you another illustration. This was a heart surgeon that was in heart surgery when it was first beginning. Very, very wealthy young man. He was in his late 30s. And he and his wife had just built a home that cost $1 million. And where he lived, $1 million home was a mansion. And his question to me was, Ron, is it okay for a Christian to live in $1 million home? And my response to him was God-given. And I didn't answer the question because I asked him a question in return. I said, what would God have you to do? You need to be asking him. He said, well, how do you do that? I told him how to have a quiet time, how to journal, and he began listening to God. And this was the interesting thing. His wife told me after a couple of years that he was spending 2.5 hours a day in the Bible, reading the Bible, finding out what God wanted him to do. Interestingly enough, God never allowed them to sell that home until just a couple of years ago. But he used that mansion, if you will, to lead hundreds and hundreds of people to Christ. He led Bible studies, they led outreaches, they became a terrific ambassador for Christ. Well, here was the point. One family lived in a trailer park, another family lived in a mansion. They both had asked the question, what's my finish line? And once I've reached my finish line, then that gives me the freedom to give and to give and to give. And I believe this, that you can move from fear when it comes to wealth to joy. In other words, when I have wealth, if my hope is in the wealth, I'm holding it like this. If my hope is in God, I'm holding it like this. And He's given me this, and I should enjoy it. And it tells me how to enjoy it in the next verse. Hold everything that God has entrusted you with an open hand, and don't close your hand on it, but understand what are the finish lines, and that means that you're then free to be rich in good works, to be generous, willing to share, storing up for yourselves a good foundation for the age to come. And I'll close with this. Hebrews 13:5 says, your life should be free from the love of money. Be content with what you have, for He Himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. In other words, more won't give you freedom. What you have right now should give you freedom.